Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2019 and the second part and probably final part of this experiment where we're taking a look what would happen if every Premier League team was bankrupt. So as you can see when we left off before, the top six looked pretty similar except for Arsenal being in second place. Manchester United and Chelsea in 5th and 6th, and then quite a few Championship clubs now up in the Premier League. You can see Leicester, former Premier League champions, getting relegated alongside Norwich and Nottingham Forest down there. In the Championship there were quite a few Premier League teams, so you can see Cardiff have gone back up, West Ham, Burnley and Brighton all in the playoffs but not going through. It was Blackburn who went through. And then further down the table you also have Huddersfield and Fulham are both down there as well. And if we drop down to League One, you can also see Southampton already been relegated down to League One, so we'll be interested to see if they can get back up to the Premier League and rebuild themselves. Currently got Ollie at the wheel. The wheel has been turned very firmly in the direction of coming off the road in the last couple of seasons, but you can see they've really suffered under their finances, which I think are now back to normal-ish. I think they've had a few owners come in, looking at last time. You can see they did get a new owner coming in 2022. Their second new owner as well, or at least a new chairman came in. But they have been through a lot of financial upheaval in that time. Just a quick look at their transfer history. Going back through the seasons, you can see pretty normal there. A bit more money going out, and then a huge amount of money going out. I think this must be when they were relegated to the Championship. So Ward-Prowse going out, Højbjerg, Boufal, Hout, Matthew Targett, Cedric also going. Just everybody, absolute fire sale here. They got quite a lot of cash for their players, to be fair, 200 million. Season after that, 61 million going out the club. And then more recently, just 5 million net negative on their season. So they've suffered quite badly with their finances, but they seem to still have a few players like Guido Carrillo there, and they've still got their stadium and infrastructure and everything, so I don't think it's too bad for them. But what we're going to do today is jump forward probably about 20 years. I'm not going to try and drag this one out too long because the first one was about a 40-minute episode. So we'll just go about 20 years into the future, something like that, and see what the makeup of English football is. Who's been winning the Premier League and the cup competitions, and is the league back to where we left it? So this is the Premier League table when we left off last time. Man City at the top, Blackburn at the bottom. What we're going to do is go forward to, it's the year 2039 now, so we're going forward 27 years into the future. We'll do it 1 year by the next in the Premier League to see if the makeup of the league has changed much, and then we'll drop down. If we see any interesting teams, we'll jump into them and see what's been happening, but then we'll jump down the leagues and see what the relegated teams have gotten up to. So the following season, you can see no change in the top six. Leicester, this is where we left off, Leicester getting relegated. Man City storming the title year after year. Crystal Palace have been relegated, alongside Cardiff going back down. Southampton did make it back into the Premier League, but were relegated at the first time of asking, which is not great for them. Top six still exactly the same. Brighton and West Ham also going down again. And then Spurs have won the title in the year 2026. Leicester getting relegated, they've become a yo-yo club. City have come back for the title. Newcastle flirting with relegation down there. Still, the top six pretty similar, except Everton. I've missed this. Everton have jumped into the top four. Suddenly, they were down in 8th place. How did I miss that so much? Everton jumped up into 3rd. I think I misread their blue badge for Chelsea, and we're actually just 3 points off the title. Whatever has happened in the year 2025 to 2026, something incredible has happened because Everton have jumped up to 3rd place. We'll check that out later. You can see they dropped down to 4th, and then 5th, and then 5th again. Man City still in the league. Spurs winning the league as well. Everton have dropped out a little bit here. Whatever that big burst of energy was, it really did wonders for them. And suddenly, we've got Stoke in here as well. So Stoke have come up. When did Stoke even get in the Premier League? They finished 14th, 8th there, 10th. So they've been around for a little while. They had a 6th place finish back there as well. 9 points for Burnley deducted here. Oh no, we know that one already. So Stoke came up quite early in this experiment. I think they might have been one of the first or second. Yeah, the second season they got promoted into the Premier League. And after bouncing around in mid-table, suddenly they jump up to 8th place, drop down again, back up, and then they finish 4th in the Champions League places on 68 points. Then 3rd, 76. 3rd with 83. Stoke were 2 points off the title around the time that Everton started to fade a little bit. Then Everton finished above them. United winning their first title for a while. Chelsea in there as well. Newcastle were relegated. You can see Southampton just hanging in there this time when Chelsea won the title. But Manchester United finally win their first Premier League title since the Fergie era. Everton and Stoke down in 6th, 7th. Liverpool have dropped down quite a bit as well in the league places. Man United winning yet another title. Stoke falling quite far down there to 11th. And then the next year, Spurs coming back to win the title. West Brom up in 6th place. Liverpool have become a mid-table team at this point. Manchester United taking another title. Stoke up to 4th. Watford in 5th as well. So the league looks a little bit more open now. It has expanded itself in terms of who can finish in the top 6. We've got a few random teams popping in there a little bit more often. United have an absolute stranglehold on the title. Wolves finishing 4th though. The points totals here for the last Champions League place pretty low. 106 points for United though. 35 wins, a draw and 2 defeats. And then in the most recent season, you've got Stoke, Blackburn up in 5th as well. But Manchester United have had this title under wraps for a little while now. Spurs had it there. It's been City's for a very long time. Spurs have won 3. Chelsea have got 1. Arsenal got 1 quite early on. But it's been Manchester United's for the last 5 years and 7 of the last 8 years as well. So they really have got a grip on it. If we just have a look at Everton and their history here, looking at their profile page, they had this run where they were sort of going up and then came back down again, 12th, 8th, and then 3rd, and then floating with European places before going on a pretty steady decline, currently managed by Musa Sissoko. Let's just have a look at their landmark. So it was around the 2026 season we want to look at here, where they did get a new owner come in who had a consortium, upgraded the youth training facilities, finished runner-up in the Europa League here. So the Moshri was the owner to begin with, and they had gone into administration, and then the new owner came in, big a load of money being spent, I would imagine. We'll take a look in a minute. But then they failed financial fair play 4 times. They did win the Europa League though. That's a nice little addition to their trophy haul here. Just seeing if they've won anything else. It doesn't look like it. So it's just the Europa League. 2 finals, 1 win for them. If we just have a look at their transfer history, going back to the start, because they were in administration at the start, so £107 million going out the club. Idrissa Gueye, Richarlison, Bernard all have been sold on, but then they had a net spend, and then I think they had a net loss, well, tiny net loss, about at the same there, net spend, and this is where they started to become a really good team. £118 million spent on a few players here, big name players from the looks of it, and then a lot of players going out as well. 92 million, Robbie Jameson going to PSG, and then more money spent, a lot more money spent here, nearly over £100 million being spent, and then the money kind of dries up a little bit. So they've not been too spectacular with their cash there. They just must have had the right players in at the right time. If we look at who was managing them at the time, they had Andy Scott here, who resigned from the role. So he was their manager that achieved these big results. Then Bruno Genesio came in. Paul Robinson came in. Oh, not the Paul Robinson I'm thinking of. Unai Emery for a short time was their manager. He had 6 years in charge and did win the Europa League. So there was a Carabao Cup win in there for Genesio. But Unai Emery did win the Europa League with them. 6 years at the club. That's quite a long time for him to be there. So Everton, certainly an interesting case. Stoke, potentially more interesting. They seem to have a lot of money in their team here. Huge amount of cash in their team. And if we just look at their landmarks, we can see that they did. A couple of new owners came in. I mean, they weren't one of the teams hit with all the debt, so that would have been a big benefit to them. And then they won the FA Cup 2028 as well, and the Community Shield. youth facilities, training facilities being upgraded. They actually finished runners-up in the Champions League in 2030. Stoke in the Champions League final in the year 2030. And then some takeover talks before the new one came in. They did finish runners-up in the Europa League. A few final defeats after that Champions League game. 4 final defeats in a row. And they seem to have settled down a little bit now. They are rich as a club. If we look at their finances, they don't have a sugar daddy, but they do have £40 million in the bank. I don't know if that makes them rich necessarily. But just looking at their transfer history from when they got promoted to the Premier League, they got promoted in the second season, which I think would be here. So £70 million being spent then. But pretty balanced books otherwise. Every so often you get a season where they have spent a decent amount of cash. But it's generally a pretty good turnover, quite a sustainable one for the Premier League. Even that season, £109 million spent, but 91 going out. So their net span very much under control this entire time. And actually they've had more money go out than come in at the moment. But that is not bad. They've done that naturally. Jose Perez is neither Russian, but he's not Russian, but somehow manager of Stoke. I guess maybe he's got some sort of linkage. What is he Russian for? What is that about? If we look at his career stats, so he played in Russia for a long time. He must have taken their nationality. Did he ever play for Russia? That's the other question. No, he didn't have any caps for Russia, but he took their nationality in his time at the club. So Stoke were the other interesting case in the Premier League. Manchester United, the current league leaders, they've got plenty of money in their side. After struggling for a little bit, bounced around the Champions League places, they're now absolutely in control of this league. And I imagine they spent a huge amount of money in that time as well. If we just have a look here, 151, consistently spending well over £100 million every year. And that'll probably do it for you. So if we go down now and look at some of the other leagues, you can see the Premier League hasn't changed that much, to be fair. I mean, you've got Chelsea finishing down in 10th. Liverpool managed to recover, get back up to 6th. The main thing is the likes of Stoke, Everton, Wolves, Watford, who are all in around the Champions League places. But there's not an awful lot else to take a look at there. So if we go down to the Championship and just drop back to that 2023 season and the league table, and we just want to mainly keep an eye on the bottom end and see if anybody from the Premier League who had all that debt does get relegated. So at the moment, it looks like they're bouncing around mid-table and the top of the table. Now Fulham here, floating with relegation, 2 points clear. Huddersfield have been relegated in the year 26-27. 12 points taken for Leicester for falling into administration in the Championship. So they finished bottom. They could be an interesting one to keep an eye on. So Huddersfield and Leicester currently exited this league. Fulham have gone as well. 12 points taken for Brighton. They've been relegated. So some of these teams still really struggling with their finances. Leicester did manage to come back up, but then got relegated again. Fulham just about surviving every year here. Leicester just surviving as well. And then Fulham finally go down. 3 teams on 43 points there. You can see 12 points taken from Bournemouth. They've been relegated for falling into administration. This is nearly 20 years after we started this experiment, and the effects are still being seen now. So that's the kind of list of teams we're looking out for here as we head into League One league table, where Southampton were the only Premier League team down here. They got promoted. Teams coming down, we mostly want to look towards the bottom end of the table here and just spot any of those teams that we knew got relegated dropping out of this league. I'm kind of hoping that a team really has fallen down into non-league football as a result of this experiment. But at the moment, you can see Huddersfield up in 6th. They're not really struggling at the moment. They've dropped down to 11th, though. The following season, Leicester finished 14th. But nobody really hitting the bottom end of this table. A few years left to go, though. But still, 12 points taken from Huddersfield. They have been relegated, fallen into administration 5 years ago, Huddersfield, and got relegated as a result. If they'd had those extra points, they'd have 48 and still be safe. So they have gone. They came back, though, and finished 3rd, so not a huge shock there for them. And it looks like they're the only Premier League team that reached down into League Two. If we just have a look at the League Two league table, when they went down, they did finish in 3rd place. the last automatic promotion place and managed to get back up. But Huddersfield, the only Premier League team to drop down to League Two as a result of this experiment. If we just look at their landmarks here, you can see they had to sell their youth facilities. They scrapped their youth setup, went into administration, came back out again, relegated, lost their Category 4 rating. Youth setup abolished. Instead of established, sorry, not abolished. And then the new owner came in, another new owner, local businessman is never a tag you want around your club. Fell into administration again, new owner. It keeps on happening. They keep having to be sold because they have so much trouble with their finances. I'm just going to actually make myself manager of Huddersfield because I'm interested to see if they still have debt on their club from the Premier League era. If we just do that, we sacked Rico, and then just have a look at the club finances, then we can see that in terms of expenditure, big expenses last season, they've still got loan interest repayments. So let's look at the debt and loans. £69 million debt, they've still got £59 million remaining. This came in 2034. So this would have been some sort of debt consolidation 5 years ago when they went into administration and got relegated. They've still got £66 million of debt, which for a League One club is pretty unsustainable. I mean, their income last season was just 13 million, so they've got debt 5 times the size of their income, and their income spiked massively this year as well, obviously because of the promotion. Oh no, that's just a monthly kind of intake, so that would have been the end of the season. But I don't know how they're going to pay all that debt off. I suppose it'll just be 3 million coming out every year for 20 years or whatever, but if they get relegated again and carry on going down, it could be absolute curtains for Huddersfield. But you can see they did finish above Fulham, who are still down there and struggling a little bit. Looking at their landmarks, they're also owned by a local businessman after some consortiums came in. A lot of administrations in there as well. So that's it, really. That's the effect of giving every Premier League team at nearly £2 billion of debt, is that one of them will drop down to League Two. But otherwise, they'll all bounce back. They'll all have a great time, and some of them will really benefit from it, like Everton, Watford, Wolves, all managed to get into the top 4 despite all the debt that was put on their club. The only one that really surprised me was Stoke managing to break through and get into the top 4, and they did it without a big sugar daddy owner coming into the team. Now, if we just have a look at the Champions League and see what impact this has had on the past winners here, you can see Spurs won it twice very early on despite their debt, and then Man City managed to take one. They took another in 27-28, and then Stoke, Spurs, City and Chelsea all losing year after year here. Stoke, though, beaten by Barcelona in the 2029-30 season. You can see United have won quite a few, City have won one as well, but really it's Stoke that we're interested in. If we just have a look at the stages for the 2030-31 season, then let's just jump in at the quarterfinal stage where, oh no, it must be the next year, the year before. I thought Stoke have been... Oh, I've completely messed that up, haven't I? There it is. This is the season they won it, the 2030 season. You can see Milan beat Monaco, Borussia Dortmund beat PSG, Barcelona crushed Juventus, but Stoke beat Real Madrid 4-3 on aggregate. So they must have got a 2-2 draw at the Bernabeu. They've taken Real Madrid to Stoke, and Real Madrid could not do it in Stoke. When would this have been? This would have been mid-April, so probably would have been wet and windy. Cold, wet and windy night in Stoke. Real Madrid weren't up to the task. If we drop into the semi-final stage, they beat Borussia Dortmund home and away, 1-0 in each leg, and then in the final were beaten 3-1 at Wembley. Really unfortunate for Stoke there to lose in the final, but you can see that really that's not a different makeup in the Champions League, that English teams were still winning it throughout every period. There was this little break here of about 4 years, but they still had a team in almost every final. So it's not really impacted them at all in terms of being able to compete for the Champions League. And if we just have a look at the but probably a better way to do this, isn't there? If I just drop down to the Europa League and then look at the past winners in the Europa League, a lot of Premier League teams in here. So you've got Arsenal, United, Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Everton winning it as well. Watford made a Europa League final but lost to Chelsea at Celtic Park. Stoke lost one to Inter. Everton lost to Inter as well. Not doing very well there against Inter Milan. And Arsenal managing to lose one too. But the English team's absolutely cleaning up in the Europa League. And I can see that being increasingly the case. Now that the Europa League does lead to a Champions League place, I think you're going to see a lot more English teams taking that competition very seriously and picking it up. The likes of kind of Arsenal, Man United, Chelsea, who are going to be in there, at least one or two of the three of them are going to be in there regularly. They will be going to win that most seasons, so I think that's pretty accurate. No real surprise in there. Nice to see Everton win a Europa League, and then of course Liverpool went and did it 3 years later. But that is probably going to be it for this experiment. Tried to keep it reasonably brief this time. If you have ideas for experiments, let me know down in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. But until next time, see ya.